episode 8 of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio. It takes it never sleep, and to say it never sleep. We're here with you. 8 episodes in, 3 head coach firings. We had the Islanders, the Nets, now the Devils. We'll look at what went wrong in New Jersey and preview the upcoming NHL Trade Deadline tomorrow. The Giants have to make decisions on internal free agents. They elect no franchise tag. What's next for Saquon? What's next for Xavier McKinney? The Knicks keep getting hurt. Some good news on injuries, but can they afford any more sliding? And the Nets still don't know what the heck they are. The Big East bubble gets narrower, and spring trading underway. More updates with the Yankees and Mets. It's all coming up on New York State of Sports. Starts in a minute. Once again, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Ricky Keeler here with you. Reminder, you can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. You can follow the show on Twitter at NY State Sports IE, and it's at NY State Sports IE. Feel free to join in here on Spreaker, like my buddy Ralph over here, which check out his show every Tuesday. The Yinzer Report for all your Pittsburgh-related sports. I'm going to need you guys in the chat, especially if something goes on with the NHL Trade Deadline. If any big trades happen over the next hour, we'll try to get you up to date on what's going on with that. But let's start with the NHL. So as I mentioned in the intro, I've only been here 8 episodes. And now I've had to cover now the 3rd different local coach to get fired. We had the Islanders switch coaches go to Patrick Waugh. We had the Nets switch coaches with Jacques Vaughn getting released. And now the Devils let go of Lindy Ruff. And from all accounts, it was about time. This is the Devils team that had a lot of expectation. They beat the Rangers in the first round last year. A young team, looked like they were on the rise. And something just went wrong this year. They're 30-27-4 right now. They've got a lot of firepower on offense. You've got to love this team. You saw it in the Stadium Series against Philadelphia. They could put up goals in a high clip even when their top guys aren't performing. But defensively, they're not very good. And they've never been able to figure out the goaltending situation. And whether that's an indictment of Lindy Ruff or the indictment of the GM, Tom Fitzgerald, that remains to be seen. But this is, I think, more of a front office issue in New Jersey than a head coaching issue. Because Lindy Ruff is a really strong coach. You look at him from his time being with the Rangers the last couple of years. He's had a good track record in the NHL. And Taryn, thanks for hopping in as well. I'm just surprised. If anything, I'm surprised it went this long. Like, if you look at the season, there's only like 20 games left. What do you look to accomplish by getting rid of the coach at this late in the season? The Devils are not really in a position to where they could make a run. Right now, they're 8 points out of a playoff spot, which is essentially 4 games. This is a team that, if you look at the wild card, like right now they're 8 points behind the Flyers. They're tied with the Penguins, who are, in all accounts, looking to sell a guy like Jake Gensel, who we'll get into in a minute. But also 8 points behind the Flyers. So, is New Jersey going to make a big move and add the deadline by tomorrow at 3 o'clock? Probably not. There's been talk of maybe trading a guy like Tyler Toffoli You're seeing some of these rapid-fire deals, and maybe the Devils could land a first-round pick for Toffoli. It's possible. But right now, in terms of the local scene, they're probably the team with the worst odds to make the playoffs. Rangers are going to make it. And you look at the Islanders, they've got a great shot. I mean, they've won 4 in a row. They played great against the Bruins over the weekend. And now you got Patrick Waugh's club looking to maybe add some players at the deadline. So a lot of interesting things going on in New Jersey. They did bring in Travis Green as the interim coach. He's been with the Devils before. And if you're looking for some future names for next year, a couple guys keep in mind. Jay Leach, who's an assistant coach from the Seattle Kraken. He was a former Devil. Remember the talk around the Rangers last year and they're looking to make a coaching change was Mike Sullivan of the Penguins. Would he look to go to New Jersey? Probably not. It's not as high profile of a job as the Rangers. But I think if you're the Devils, you need a guy with coaching experience. You need someone to bring these young players along, try to help continue success. You can't experiment with a young head coach. But really what did Lindy Ruff in, you look at these last couple of games, they lose to Anaheim on Friday. Jack Hughes misses the penalty shot with under 5 seconds to go. And then they lose 5-1 to the Kings. So defensively, they're not showing up. Tuesday, they played the best team in the East in Florida, maybe the best team in the NHL. Tough debut for Travis Green. You're not going to expect the Devils to win that game. Florida gets up 2-0. Devils end up tying it, only for Florida to get 2 more goals. They won 5-3. So a rough road for New Jersey, and their schedule doesn't get much easier. They host the Blues tonight on ESPN. Then they host Carolina Saturday on ABC, so the Devils get the national spotlight the next couple of games. And then they're at Dallas on the 14th, right before we had episode 9 here. So you look at these 3 teams, 67 points for the Blues, 78 for Carolina, 85 for Dallas. Not really a great spot for New Jersey to be in. They do get Phoenix, the Coyotes on the road, and then the Golden Knights. By the way, you got to give the Vegas team a lot of credit. They just seem to add people left and right. That's a GM that you got to love. Got a GM that doesn't care what top guys he gives up, what salary he retains. He just goes for it. Which leads me to the Rangers. They made a deal on Wednesday. They trade for Alex Wenberg from the Kraken. They give up a second-round pick in 24 and a conditional fourth-round pick in 2025. I believe it could be a third. Something like if Nils Lundqvist plays in 51 games for Dallas. So the Rangers, I don't think, gave up too much in this deal. You look at what Wenberg gives them, they need that third-line center. They need a guy that's going to help the bottom 2 pairs. You could put Barclay Goodrow on the 4th line, although in practice today, from all reports, they added Goodrow to the 3rd line. But either way, Wenberg's some good help on the penalty kill. He's not a guy that's going to get you a lot of points. He's only got 25 this year, 9 goals, 16 assists, but he's a great shot blocker, great in the penalty kill. And that's what the Rangers kind of need. They kind of need that veteran presence on those bottom 2 lines. But the key now for the Rangers is they have to add that right winger. They need a guy in the top line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. And they're a team that has to go all in. We've talked about it in like the first couple of shows. I don't care if the draft is at the Sphere that James Dolan owns and he wants a first-round pick. You know what James Dolan should want more? A cup. A Stanley Cup that hasn't happened in 3 decades for the Rangers. And you look at the latest report from Emily Kaplan from ESPN Thursday morning. The Rangers had a chance to get Adam Henrique and Frank Vetrano from the Ducks. And it was going to cost Capo Caco and a first-round pick, and they didn't do it. While they watched Henrique go to Edmonton. I know the Rangers don't have a lot of draft picks. I know they don't have a lot of cap space. But if you get a shot to make that deal, maybe they get Vetrano for a slightly cheaper deal. But you want to be all in? Go get Jake Gensel from the Penguins. I know it might cost you Gabe Perreault or Brendan Othman or one of these top prospects. Jake Gensel is a difference maker. You talk about a guy who has the same amount of goals on 5-on-5 in 50 games this year. I think it's like 16. That he had all of last year. And what are the Rangers' biggest weakness? 5-on-5. You talk about a guy in Gensel who has postseason experience with Pittsburgh. Now, the only problem would be you'd have to move him to right wing. That's his off-wing position. And you'd have to sweeten the deal to make the deal in the division, I'm sure. But that's a deal to go all in for. Vetrano, nice piece. He's been with the Rangers before. You make that deal. If they want to go a little cheaper, guy that's in New Jersey tonight, Pavel Buchnevich, former Ranger. Blues could probably retain some salary. That'd be another move you can make. But some other news today in Rangers practice, Jacob Trouba did not practice today due to a lower body injury. We'll see how long that Trouba's out, but the Rangers need him, the captain. Big presence on defense. I get it. New York doesn't have a lot of cap space to work with, but he has to make a big deal. You saw Florida get Tarasenko. That's a big deal to get their offense going. Henrique go to Edmonton, as I mentioned. Big pieces are going to Stanley Cup contenders. Vegas gets Noah Hanifin, the defenseman from Calgary, last night. You have to make a big move if you expect to go the steps you want to go this year. You added Peter Laviolette for that reason. Meanwhile, the Islanders have won 4 in a row. 4 points back of a playoff spot. And there are a couple names I think the Islanders could look at now that you have to consider them in buy mode, whether that's former Ranger and current Shark Anthony Duclair, another forward to help them out. If you want to go defense, Tyson Barrie from Nashville would be another name to look at. That's a team that's kind of clicking on all cylinders at the right time. And Lou Lamoriello is starting to put his magic touch into everything again. Rangers, I thought, played well this week. They did lose both games. They lost on a shootout in Toronto. You get a point there. That was big. But then losing to Florida, Igor didn't have his best game late as Florida won 4-2. Rangers host the Blues on Saturday. They host the Devils on Monday, the 11th. And then they're at Carolina before going to Tampa. So a little bit of a tougher stretch for the Rangers here. You get a local game in between. Carolina is a team they're trying to hold off to win the Metropolitan. So we'll see what the Rangers do there. As for the Islanders, they are at San Jose tonight. San Jose stinks. That's a game the Islanders should win. I don't care that it's on the road. At Anaheim on Sunday, they stink. At the Kings on the 11th, and then at the Sabres on the 14th. So Islanders, yes, they're on their West Coast trip. You should win 2 games at least, maybe even win them all. I know the Kings are better record-wise than the Islanders, but that's a series they should win. Take 2 games, keep your win streak going, and let's see what moves they make for the deadline. So at least if you're the Rangers, you're waiting a little while to make the deadline moves and kind of add them in, like Wemberg gets a couple practices in before he gets into a game, which is big. I want to remind you that this show, along with other shows here on IE Sports Radio, brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Beef Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, low in sugar, and high in protein. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. Yeah, pretty much, Taryn, that's like a nice way to put it about San Jose, unfortunately. Islanders are minus 280 tonight, so it kind of tells you a story as the road team here. Jen, good to see you. And Taryn, I'll answer that St. John's question a little bit later. They are giving me more reason to talk about them on this show. And it should be a fun next couple of weeks. And yeah, the Ducks have won 3 out of 4 and recently beat the Devils with Larry in attendance. Shout out to Larry, by the way. Yeah, that was a fun game, but to lose on a penalty shot at the end of the game when you got a shot to tie it. Crazy stuff. Anyways, we'll take our first break. We'll come back and we'll talk some Giants, including one notable sports personality reporting from Indianapolis that maybe the Giants have remorse giving Daniel Jones all that money. We're going to have some fun with that coming up next here on New York's Day of Sports on IE Sports Radio.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Lentarius Locke.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Welcome to the 305, aka the Magic City, and this is Magic City Scoreboard. I'm your host JB, and right here we're gonna talk anything Miami, Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, Miami Hurricanes, Marlins, Panthers, Inter Miami, and even high school football. So join me once a week right here on Magic City Scoreboard on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed to all that is sports.
So be sure to check out Magic City Scoreboard with JB coming up tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. 2 more shows coming up for you on IE Sports Radio this Thursday evening. I mentioned the Magic City show at 7 o'clock. 8 p.m. Eastern, The Extra Mile with Daryl and Christopher talking all things auto racing. For those who want the update on my NASCAR standings, I did not finish in second this week. My driver did finish 7th. So I've got 3 top 10s in a row. I don't know if I'm going to get 4, but it's been a fun ride we're on so far. Anyway, we're talking about auto racing, which big thing is Indianapolis. The NFL Scouting Combine was in Indianapolis this past week. No, I'm not going to dive into all the big workouts and things like that, but there was a lot of big news around the New York Giants. And they made the decision last Tuesday before the deadline was to tag players. No franchise tag on Saquon Barkley. No franchise tag or transition tag on safety Xavier McKinney. Let's start with McKinney. I think we've done a lot on Saquon, so I want to start with McKinney first. The Giants, I think, kind of made the right move in hindsight. I know there was a lot of, on Tuesday, where people were like, oh, they should have tagged him. And I think a similar situation is, you saw what the Patriots did. Why did I bring up the Patriots here? Xavier McKinney situation is similar to New England. New England gave Kyle Duggar the transition tag, which gives him $13 million for this year. Now, why is that a big deal? The transition tag is different than the franchise tag because when you have the transition tag, you can still negotiate with other teams. Just that, in this case, the Patriots have the right to match any offer that comes from another team for Duggar. Giants could did that with McKinney, who was probably, I would say, their top 2 or 3 defensive player on their squad. But you look at all the safeties that are available in free agency. You saw the Broncos cut Justin Simmons today because they're paying Russell Wilson and with all that dead cap. You saw the Bills get rid of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And there's a lot of safety depth out there. The safety position is starting to become like the running back position where you can find a good player at a relatively cheap cost. So the Giants, I don't think, have to worry about paying Xavier McKinney all this big money that he's expecting. And if they miss out on McKinney, there's at least other options they can pivot to. I heard McKinney say on the Kay Adams' show today that they're still trying to work things out, but it's hard to believe that considering they couldn't get done, or they got to get something done before the legal tampering period on Monday. We'll see. There's a Giant team that does have a lot of holes. I think the big one is they look at offensive line in case they want to make a surprise move with the 6th pick. And this is what I was referring to earlier. Rich Eisen on his radio show this past week said that he heard out in Indianapolis that the Giants have buyer's remorse on Daniel Jones, meaning they shouldn't have given him all that guaranteed money. I don't see really what's the blame for Daniel Jones. Keep in mind, this guy got hurt last year. They've never given him a good offensive line. They've constantly changed coaches, constantly changed offensive coordinators. Am I saying Daniel Jones is going to be great? No. I didn't like the pick at the time when they drafted him. I thought they reached. And it looks like they're trying to do the same thing again. Because if that's true, and the Giants, some in that building believe they made a mistake, are they going to make the move at 6 to either trade up for Drake May or Jaden Daniels? Or are they going to be bold again and Joe Shane pull his best Dave Gettleman impersonation and take J.J. McCarthy at 6? Which I think would be ridiculous. I know J.J. McCarthy didn't get to show off a lot of his skills at Michigan because that's how the offense is designed. Jim Harbaugh didn't ask him to do crazy things. He's got the skills, no doubt. But the pick at 6 is just such a reach. And they owe Daniel Jones to at least put some weapons around this guy. Saquon Barkley's been probably one of the only legitimate weapons he's had since being the quarterback. And Barkley's going to probably go. I know the Giants are going to hope they can match him or that maybe his free agent offers won't be out there. But you can't tell me a team like the Texans won't go after Barkley. The Cowboys, the Eagles, the Ravens. New England could use another running back with Ramondre Stevenson. There's so many teams that could use a back like Barkley. And especially what I think hurts the Giants in that negotiation, the wide receiver market is so dry. T. Higgins, franchise tagged. Michael Pittman, franchise tagged. Mike Evans, re-signed. The best receiver out there is Calvin Ridley, who had a gambling suspension 2 years ago. The Giants need to put their best weapons around Daniel Jones and see what he actually has. And another problem the Giants are going to have is there was the report that Darren Waller could be thinking about retirement. So let's say Darren Waller makes a decision to retire. The Giants don't have much options to pivot at tight end. Dalton Schultz re-signed with the Texans. Your best options are either Hunter Henry or Noah Fant. The point being the Giants need to use that 6th pick. Give Daniel Jones a legitimate weapon at wide receiver. Give him skill position players he could use to best maximize his talent. And maybe this is Joe Shane and Brian Dable, if they do make that pick at quarterback, trying to reset their timeline of when they could be fired or not. Because it's a big year, especially for Dable. Maybe not so much for Shane, who I think could look at a guy like Drake May even and think there's some Josh Allen similarities to his game. But I think picking him at 6, I think the Giants need to find better, fill their bigger holes at 6 than try to get another quarterback and put him in a similar situation. Because even you look at Daniel Jones last year, he was out as starting center. Andrew Thomas was hurt for a little bit at left tackle. Do I think the Giants could use a veteran backup? Yeah, I do. I think getting a guy that could back up Daniel Jones to try to slow down his recovery if he's not ready for training camp, I think that's a bigger need. I think if not Tyrod, maybe not Tyrod Taylor, but somebody of that similar style to where you could win a couple of games. But I don't see exactly what's the rush to add another quarterback. Because in hindsight, you made the mistake in not giving Barkley the money. I'm not saying I had to overpay for Saquon, but that money that you gave to Jones, you could have easily franchised Daniel Jones and given Saquon the new contract. Nobody was saying you had to give Daniel Jones all that money, which is now the standard contract for what any quarterback could be looking for, i.e. Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's going to want Daniel Jones money from any team, and I would think, just a prediction, I think he goes back to Tampa Bay. Just because I don't think there's going to be another team willing to pay that money that's not in the Kirk Cousins market or the Justin Fields market or something like that. But it just goes to show you, when you look at this Giants team, I think they've got to find a way to help Daniel Jones rather than just wipe the slate clean. That's got to be their goal in free agency. Remember, the NFL legal tampering period begins on Monday. Free agency, the league year officially, begin on Wednesday. So we'll have on next week's show plenty of updates on what the Giants do in free agency. The Jets have about $27 million in cap space right now. They release C.J. Uzomah at tight end. We'll see what the Jets decide to do. Do they bring back Bryce Huff at linebacker? Do they restructure more contracts to get their salary cap space up? We're going to find out. A lot of pressure, though, as we've mentioned in past shows on Robert Saleh and Brian Dave. We're going to get into this later because at the end of the show, I'm going to rank my 5 coaches from 5 to 1 that we haven't talked about yet in the show as the most likely who's going to get fired next. I don't know what's going to happen within 3 or 4 episodes, but we're going to find out. I want to remind you that for the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has brought you amazing content, ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel, to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities, such as New York, around the country. Make sure to follow us on Twitter or X at IE Sports Radio, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Keep up with the latest in sports and with our shows. Check out our daily website, iesportsradio.com, for sports news, the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, podcast pages, our community forum, and the shop, which has awesome merchandise. You should check that out. Thank you for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. So coming up next, we'll talk some basketball. Knicks are still banged up, yet they keep winning or losing in some cases. I still don't know what the Nets are. And the Big East bubble, we'll get into the picture and what that means going into the conference tournament next week. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be back after this.
What's good, everyone? It's Drewski, the host of Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. On this station, we cover everything in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. From we cover the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Stars, Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Wings, Texas Rangers, TCU, SMU, we cover it all right here every Wednesdays from 9 to 10 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you stay live with me on the Heart of Texas Sports on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Getting set to dive into the NBA here on New York State of Sports, about a half hour into the show. Been an interesting week, especially for the Knicks. And Sunday night when the Knicks were in Cleveland, taking on Donovan Mitchell, well, no Donovan Mitchell for the Cavaliers in that game. And Jalen Brunson goes down the first minute of the game, and all you're thinking is, why can't the Knicks have nice things? And I still stand by that because this is a Knicks team that everybody should be proud of. They're giving their best effort every game. And they go into Cleveland without Brunson, and they find a way to get the win. Dante DiVincenzo gets 28 points. Bojan Bogdanovic, 20 points off the bench. Miles McBride gives him 16. Josh Hart has a triple-double with 19 rebounds. Fantastic win. You find out Brunson only has a knee contusion, which is great in all things considered because it looked like a worse injury than it actually was. Because without Jalen Brunson, this Knicks team is finished. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's why to me, I'm not saying he's the MVP of the league, but to me, he should get MVP votes. Because his team, essentially, without him, does not have that go-to guy that the offense can revolve around. And you saw that earlier this week on Tuesday when the Knicks took on Atlanta at home. Atlanta did not have Trae Young, and you lose 116-100. And you give up 26 points to Jalen Johnson. You give up 22 off the bench to DeAndre Hunter, 21 for Dejounte Murray. You allow the Hawks to shoot 50% from the floor. The Knicks as a team shoot 16 of 52 from 3. Dante DiVincenzo goes 5 for 17 from beyond the arc. As a team, the Knicks shot just 38%. And that's really the issue with this team. Is right now they could beat anybody on any given night, but they could lose to anybody on any given night. Because of how banged up now they are. Now, Tom Thibodeau gave us some updates at practice earlier on Thursday. Jalen Brunson is practicing, which is great news. OG Anunoby has been cleared for contact, so he's day-to-day now, so he's getting closer to coming back. Julius Randle's still far away. Mitchell Robinson's getting close to coming back. So there are reinforcements along the way. I did like what the move the Knicks made over the weekend, bringing in Shake Milton. I think he adds more depth at the guard position. They desperately need help in that regard because these guys are taxed. Miles McBride played 46 minutes the other day. Josh Hart played 43. Dante DiVincenzo played 39. These are more minutes than a lot of these guys are used to. And the fact of the matter is, without these guys coming back and really adding to that depth, the Knicks are really only playing 8 deep. And the 8 deep is different when you have players playing outside the normal minutes. Hardenstein's still probably not 100%. He's playing 20 minutes. Precious Achiuwa is playing a ton of minutes. This is a Knicks team that is running into a crucial stretch of their season these next 3 games. You look at in the East right now, the Knicks would be the 5 seed, but they're only 1 game ahead of Philly from being out of the play-in. And if the Knicks end up being in the play-in, it's a disappointment. Now, you're not going to go crazy on them and deem it a failure and start calling for Tom Thibodeau's job, but this team deserved a lot better. They have a big game tomorrow night against the Magic at home. Magic are rolling. They've won 13 of their last 16. They're 16-18 on the road. Magic crushed the Knicks on Valentine's Day right before the All-Star break in Orlando. There's a Magic team that's young. It's Paolo Banchero's playing like a star. And then the Knicks have a back-to-back with Philadelphia. And you don't know what Philadelphia team is going to show up. Is it the Sixer team that can compete with the top teams in the East? Or is it the Sixer team that's going to lose to Brooklyn and Memphis back-to-back? But all these teams are in that muddled middle right now. You know where Boston's at. You know where Milwaukee's starting to be outside of last night getting blown out by Golden State. They've won 6 of their last 7. You kind of know where Cleveland's at because they're getting it done without Donovan Mitchell and in some cases Karis LeVert. So Cleveland kind of has the reinforcements it needs. But when you look at 4 through 8, anything can happen. I'm taking Chicago and Atlanta out of the mix. Orlando, Knicks, Miami, Philly, Indiana. You got 5 teams for 3 spots. And you're scared of the Pacers, especially with Halliburton, what he can do. Who knows if Embiid comes back in these last 20 games? That plays a factor. Miami's a veteran team. They have Dallas tonight. Knicks fans will be watching that. If Miami wins that game, they're now tied for 5th. So the Knicks are in that muddled middle where they're going to have to figure things out and figure it out quick. And I don't know whether it's bringing Randall back quicker. We'll see. At least it's good news they get Anunoby and those guys back. And Brunson hopefully should be back soon. He was doing a lot of practice today. I think they need Brunson on Friday. Magic did a good job against them anyway. Oh, and Jed, good point. Evan Mobley and Max Strus now down. But Cleveland just finds ways to win in these weird ways. They're kind of like the Knicks light in a sense that like the Cavaliers get a guy that finds a way to win a game late. Same way the Knicks have kind of had that going on. I think a Knick Cavs series would be fun to watch, and you saw that Sunday night. Josh Hart was having a little bit of fun with Donovan Mitchell on the bench. The question is going to be, because I think Cleveland is, I wouldn't say safe on the 3 seed line, but they're 3.5 ahead of Orlando. I don't really see Cleveland collapse. That's why I think the top 3 have kind of separated themselves in the Eastern Conference. Speaking of the Eastern Conference, look at the play-in situation. The Brooklyn Nets having I think the weirdest week that an 18 could have. We mentioned how big their back-to-back games were against the Hawks last week. They had to win them both to stay alive, and they did. Won it in convincing fashion. You have to give Kevin Alves Club a lot of credit. Then they go play the Grizzlies, and this is not your Ja Morant Grizzlies. This is a Grizzly team starting Luke Kennard and guys like Conchar and Jemison, Aldama, Williams Jr. And you allow Memphis to shoot 46% from the floor, and you lose 106-102 at home. You can't follow up 2 games like that against Atlanta, put your season on the line, then lose to Memphis, then come back the next night and beat Philly. So who is this Nets team? Because they played Grell against Philly. Dorian Finney-Smith had 20 points. Schroeder had 20. Bridges only had 15. But you got 19 off the bench from Lonnie Walker. But right now you don't know where the Nets are because their schedule actually is pretty favorable. The next couple games they get Detroit and Charlotte on the road. Definitely a good chance to win 2 games there before they play at Cleveland, at Orlando, and at Indiana. Being that the Barclays is going to be taken over by the Atlantic 10 next week. But now the news comes out today, Ben Simmons shut down for the remainder of the season. No surprise. It's a surprise when Ben Simmons actually is in the lineup. So, to me, it's not bad news for the Nets in that regard. It's not good news for Ben Simmons, who eventually I think he's going to have to find a way to stay on the court for a consistent amount of time. Because that trade from James Harden looks dreadful. What Brooklyn did. I know they had to do it. Harden wanted out, but man, just a sad story all around. But all hope not lost for Brooklyn. But I think you're going to look back if they don't make the play-in, and right now they're 3 games behind Atlanta. If they had just beaten Memphis, they're legit right there. And you look at the Hawks' schedule coming up. They've got the Grizzlies coming up. They've got home to the Pelicans, at Portland, at Utah, at Clippers, at Lakers, at Phoenix. So Hawks are going out west. Would be a perfect opportunity for Brooklyn to gain some ground. You can't lose games like that at home when you're fighting for a playoff spot. You just can't. Moving over to the Big East. Big East tournament next week at Madison Square Garden. And the Big East has a lot of teams that appear maybe heading to Dayton, Ohio in a couple weeks for the first 4, and at least on the bowl for the NCAA tournament. We'll start with Seton Hall. Played I think a win-in-your-in game last night against Villanova at the Prudential Center, and Shaheen Holloway's club found a way to get it done. They picked up a 66-56 win. Kadari Richmond had 20 points. You look at what Dre Davis continues to do with 18. He's been one of the more improved players in the Big East. Villanova only makes 9 3-pointers, 33% as a team. They held at 56 points. And you look at the job Shaheen Holloway's done. I know their metrics are terrible, but they were picked 9th in the Big East in the preseason. And they're going to finish, at worst, top 4 in the league. So the former St. Peter's coach has done a heck of a job. And this is a team I would not want to play because this team can rebound with you with Badeko in the paint. Adewusu's got that toughness you look for. They've got Dawes who can shoot a little bit. They only do play about 7 guys. But this is a tough, gritty group that's beaten UConn, that's beaten Marquette. I think they're in. Now that kind of hurts St. John's. Because what St. John's needed last night was Villanova to win that game. Move Villanova's metrics up. Now, Villanova in the net dropped from 26 to 29. Not bad news for the Johnnies. Now, why is that a big thing? I'm doing a lot of math here, so bear with me. The order for that home win that St. John's had against Villanova earlier in the year to be a quad 1 win, Villanova has to be in the top 30 in the net. Right now, Nova's at 29. Every time a quad 1 or quad 2 win changes, that's going to affect the St. John's resume. Because right now, if you look at most bracketologists, St. John's either that last team in or the first team out. They're right on that cut line. And give them credit. They went into DePaul. And I said earlier, San Jose stinks. The Sharks look much better. If the Sharks stink, DePaul is probably a word worse than stink. DePaul is 3-27 this year as a Division I program. So St. John's goes into Chicago. They not only have to win, they have to blow the doors off this team. It was close for about 10 minutes, and then the Red Storm found their way to win at 104-77, put up their highest point total of the year, second highest of any Big East team this year, and they did it in an unconventional way. Earlier in the game, Dennis Jenkins picks up 2 fouls. Glenn Taylor picks up 2 fouls. And you're thinking, oh boy, the top players, Jenkins is their best player, Taylor's the best defender. And it kind of limits who's going to step up. Well, Jordan Dingle makes 8 of 10 shots, 19 points. Naheem Aline off the bench, the former Husky, 4 of 7, 11 points. Simeon Welcher hits 3 threes off the bench. He has 12 points. RJ Lewis has 11. St. John's shot 60% from the floor. Yes, it's DePaul, but that is the best they have played on offense all year. You add that to the game at Butler last week, they are playing their best basketball at the right time. And this is without getting offensive production from Jenkins. Joel Soriano still hasn't been the offensive force that people have wanted him to be, but they've stayed in the hunt. They've won 4 in a row, and now the tough stretch. They get Georgetown on Saturday at home. On paper, not a tough game. But remember, a couple weeks ago at the Verizon Center, not the Verizon Center, it used to be the Verizon Center, in D.C., St. John's was up 20. Georgetown cut the lead to about 3 late before the Red Storm pulled away. It's going to be senior day. Joel Soriano is going to get honored, and I think it's going to be an emotional game for him. You got to reward all he's done, especially in those lean years where they weren't really on the NCAA tournament picture. The effort he was constantly giving, chose to stay with this program. He deserves all the recognition that he's going to get. They have to beat Georgetown. They beat Georgetown. They go 11-9 in the Big East and 18 wins. Now, why is that a big deal? Adam Zagoria brought up this stat last night on Twitter. Since 2013-2014, 41 out of 44 teams that finish at least above 500 in conference play made the big dance. If you finish 500, only 4 out of 11. So if St. John's is 11-9 in the Big East, that's going to be really hard to keep them out. But I do think they would need 1 win in the Big East tournament. Right now, that 4-5 game would be Seton Hall next Thursday, 2:30, while we're on the air toward the end of the show. Like I said, Seton Hall, I think, is in regardless. As long as Seton Hall crushes DePaul Saturday, which they should, they're in. If St. John's were to beat Georgetown Saturday and then beat Seton Hall, maybe they get lucky, things break their way, it's Marquette without Tyler Kolek, they're in. I don't think they need to beat Connecticut in the semifinal, which would be a great show Friday night at the Garden if that happens. You look at the job Rick Pitino's done. You look at the lack of... They really don't have the one bad loss, which is Michigan. We'll see if Boston College goes outside of the top 100. The net would be 2. But you look at the win over Utah, another bubble team, which they need Utah to beat Oregon State to enhance that resume. 2 wins over Villanova. 2 wins over Butler. A win over Providence. A win over Creighton. I think they've done enough. Their non-conference schedule was pretty tough this year. I mean, nobody could have predicted that Michigan would be terrible when that game was scheduled earlier this summer. And you look at Rick Pitino in that press conference challenging those players, and a lot of those players have mentioned that they viewed that as a challenge from their coach, not a comments that put them down. And you can believe Patino whether or not that was a motivational tactic or not. I think, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, it's something he's done all year. And quite frankly, he was speaking for the fan base. Was he wrong to call the players out by name? Yeah, probably. But this is a team that continues to find ways to win. It's a team that's found its way offensively. It's been playing defense without fouling. And they're a team you don't want to play in the Big East tournament right now. They have a shot to make a deep run next week. But I think they only need one win to get in. So beat Georgetown, beat Seton Hall, which would be trying to avoid Seton Hall beating them 3 times. And I think that's enough. Barring what else happens in the bubble, barring bid Steelers, I think 2 wins is enough. At least to get them to Dayton. Which, there's a possibility, Rick could be playing his son in New Mexico, who's also on the bubble. Which I think that storyline for the committee would be fun. Very quickly, other local college basketball action. Rutgers takes on Wisconsin tonight. Wisconsin's been awful since starting 16-4. Rutgers also finishes up at Ohio State at home to end the Big Ten season. Ohio State's had some good wins recently. So Rutgers will try to get in that top 8 in the Big Ten. Syracuse probably play themselves off the bubble with the loss to Clemson. Their net rating is in the 80s. I think the Cuse will probably have to win the ACC tournament to get in. But locally, the NEC tournament semifinals are this weekend. Northeast Conference, Lemoyne takes on Merrimack. And Wagner takes on the top seed Central Connecticut State. Remember, those are those fun one-bid Steelers. But the sad part is when you look at the new way the NIT is constructed, you don't get if the regular season champ doesn't win their conference tournament, they don't get into the NIT, which I think is a shame. I mean, you saw what Eastern Kentucky in the Atlantic Sun, they were the number 1 seed. They lose at home in the quarters, and now their season's over. I think you got to reward the regular season champs in those leagues in some way. It's tougher to win a conference tournament than it is to win a regular season, but you're taking away the meaning of the regular season when your season can end on 1 game, especially in these smaller one-bid leagues like the Northeast Conference. Like if the 1 seed in the Northeast Conference doesn't win the conference tournament, they should get to continue playing some more basketball for the seasons they had. But we'll have some fun. We'll preview the Big East. We'll have some Big East tournament talk next week. The Atlantic 10 tournaments here in Barclays, so we'll talk about that. The Metro Atlantic tournament with teams like Iona and Fairfield, Manhattan. We'll talk about those teams as well. That'll be coming up next week. So we'll take one more break. We'll come back. We'll dive into some baseball, some soccer, and my rankings of who might be the next New York coach to get fired. Stay tuned here to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio. One more commercial and we wrap up the show after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Final 10 minutes here of New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio. And interesting news I saw. There's Andrew Filipponi, who is a radio show host on 937 The Fan in Pittsburgh, had a tweet 20 minutes ago that David Pagnotta, the NHL Network insider, said on that radio station, the Penguins and Rangers talks involving Jake Gensel have intensified. The Rangers' first-round pick and Capo Caco could both be in the deal. So maybe Chris Drury was listening to me when I said you got to make that big deal. We'll see what happens over the next 24 hours, but could be some good news for the Rangers ahead, but we'll talk more about that next week should that trade come into fruition. Real quick on the baseball front, a couple of things I'm noticing at spring training. Yankees, Juan Soto swinging the bat well, Anthony Rizzo swinging the bat well, just put him in bubble wrap until the end of spring training. Those results don't matter. I don't think Carlos Rodon's results matter too much either. He gave up a couple of home runs yesterday against Tampa Bay. He was talking to Jack Curry about how he's working on his different off-speed pitches, and I think because his second half was so miserable last year, people put too much on his results in spring. I think as long as Rodon comes out of spring healthy and the velocity's there with the fastball, which yesterday was sitting 93, touching 94, if it gets at a couple miles an hour up in velo, I think they'll be okay. The Yankees just need consistency from Stroman, Cortez, and Schmidt. They need Rodon to be elite, but I'm not going to worry too much about Rodon until the regular season begins. I think people are giving him too much grief from last year. Mets, on the other hand, loving what I'm seeing from Tyler McGill, who's trying to compete for one of those rotation spots. I wrote about it on MetsMerizedOnline.com on Wednesday. McGill's 6 strikeouts and 3 hitless innings against the Yankees. Yes, the Yankees didn't bring a lot of their regulars. No Soto, no Judge down 14 Lucy. The best hitter, I think, was Anthony Volpe. But the splitter looks really good. He's worked on that spork pitch that he learned from Kodai Senga. And if McGill is consistent at the back of the rotation, it adds more depth for the Mets, who you saw Luis Severino touch 98 again the other day. He's trying to work on not tipping pitches. You've seen Sean Manaea kind of have some iffy moments this spring. Hauser's looked okay. Quintana, he'll pitch tonight with some rough moments there that he had against Houston last week. But I love what you're seeing from McGill. Mets will have their regular lineup out tonight outside of Jeff McNeil, who's still, I think, about a week from playing games, but sounds like everything's good progression-wise with him. But pretty much have their opening day lineup tonight against Nationals. That game's on SNY at 6 o'clock, so that should be a fun one. On the soccer front, NYCFC, by the way, look at their plans for new stadium. They're looking to make this cube kind of entrance for 2027, which looks awesome. Now, if only the cube looked little bit, I would want their offense to look a little bit better than the cube. Their offense in 2 games has yet to score a goal. They're one of 2 teams in the East, them in New England, that don't have a point. They lost 2-0 to St. Louis on Saturday. They will take on Portland this week in their home opener at Yankee Stadium. Portland has a win and a draw in their first 2 games. Meanwhile, the Red Bulls, they picked up a big win in Houston against the Dynamo last Saturday. They picked up a 2-1 win. They got a goal from Elias Nanuel in the 43rd minute, and then Lewis Morgan had the tie-breaking goal in the 59th minute. Both teams had 5 shots on goal, but 7 corner kicks. Red Bulls generated more chances, and they were able to benefit from those opportunities. They will take on Dallas in their home opener this week. Dallas has 1 win and 1 loss in their first 2 games. So as we wrap up, I'm going to give you I only picked 5 coaches here. Now, why did I pick 5? I'm going to leave Peter Laviolette off. He's not in danger of getting fired. So let's leave him out the mix. So 5-1, 5 being least likely, 1 being who might be the next coach that gets canned. We're having some fun with this. Number 5, I'm going to go with Carlos Mendoza, first year manager with the Mets. I can't see anything that gets him canned his first year. I think especially with the Mets not having the high expectations, maybe they compete for a wild card, maybe they don't. So for me, he's number 5. I'm going to put Tom Thibodeau at number 4. Again, I think as long as the Knicks don't lose in the play-in game and don't make the playoffs, barring their injuries, I think his job's going to be safe. I think the injuries have played a large part if the Knicks do end up tailing down the stretch. So I'm going to put him at 4. Number 3, I'm going to put Aaron Boone. A lot of pressure on him this year, but I don't think as much as the 2 football coaches have. I think the Yankee front office is big fans of Aaron Boone. I think that would help him. And I think this Yankee team, I think the only way Boone loses his job is if the Yankees miss the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. And even though they have some issues with their pitching, I don't really see them missing the playoffs. So to me, that'd be number 3. Number 2, I'm going to go Brian Daboll. We talked about it earlier. I think the Giants do take a rookie quarterback that kind of gives Brian Daboll some time, as well as Joe Shane. So that plays a factor in this as well, and the players do love playing for Daboll. And number 1, I'm going to go Robert Saleh. I think with all the pressure with the Jets, what does Aaron Rodgers do? How does he come back after missing the whole year this past year? Saleh hasn't had a winning season with the Jets. Him and Joe Douglas are on the hot seat going into the year. What do the Jets do in free agency? What do they do in the draft with the top 10 pick? Do they go offensive line and help their quarterback, or do they go best player available, which they usually do? But I think the hot seat is right there around Saleh right now, to the point where I think if I had to pick the next local coach to get fired, it won't be in the next 3 or 4 episodes, at least I don't think, it would be Robert Saleh. But time will tell. So next week, we'll recap the NHL Trade Deadline. We will talk about the Big East tournament, the Atlantic 10 tournament. Conference tournament week is like one of my favorite weeks in sports. I love March Madness. I think it's fantastic. And with the Big East bubble going on, it's going to be so much fun. To me, I think Connecticut's the best team going. Especially watch what they did at Marquette last night, even though Marquette didn't have Tyler Kolek. Carabin was hitting shots. Spencer was hitting shots. You got Klingon in the paint. They can do a bunch of different things, and Dan Hurley's a really good coach. I think right now that's the team I'm picking to win the national championship, but I got to see the rest of the bracket, which will be next Sunday. I'm looking forward to that. We'll recap the home openers of the soccer teams. We will keep the updates going on the Knicks and the Nets. So much to look forward to. Right now, I think my prediction is I think Seton Hall gets in. I think St. John's will end up getting in. My brother asked me last night, he goes, what do you think the prediction, if you had to give odds if St. John's makes it? I think it's 50-50 right now. I think if they beat Georgetown, those chances increase. And this isn't the St. John's-Georgetown rivalry of old. As much as Ed Cooley's club has competed over the last few weeks, gave Xavier a scare, hung with Providence the other day, I don't really think they're going to beat St. John's necessarily, especially at the Garden. The crowd's going to be too into it at noon Eastern on Saturday on Fox. I think the squad's going to be there. But I'm going to give my last parting words to Chris Drury. Make a big move. Go out there, get Gensel, maybe get Vetrano. If you can't land Gensel, you got to make that big move. This fan base has a shot at a Stanley Cup. And the only way they're going to do that is if you give your first round pick. I don't care. You know what James Dolan should bring to the draft if he doesn't have a pick? Bring the Stanley Cup trophy. That's better. That's a better thing to show off than who your next first round pick is. We kind of learned this with the past with the trade deadlines in sports. I'm a big minor league baseball fan. If you see the spring breakout rosters for the Mets and Yankees, I think that's been pretty cool. But I digress. Sometimes making the big move is better than hanging on to the top prospect. It's a case-by-case basis. So the Rangers going to use Gabe Perreault or Brendan Othman anytime soon? Are they going to help those guys win a cup? Is Capo Caco going to be here long enough to win a cup? If the answer is no, you have to make that move. Yankees, it's a little different because you have Spencer Jones as the guy in the outfield. Juan Soto is next to waiting. And we'll talk about that also next week. Juan Soto's potential free agency next year, which I can't believe we're talking about that now, but that's been a big topic that it seems like Met fans are holding on to hope for next year in Juan Soto before the regular season this year even starts. I want to remind you that you can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555, at RICK, letter I, Nader like a Terminator 35. You can follow the show on Twitter at NY State Sports IE, and it's at NY State Sports IE. Tune in tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, Magic City Sports, and then 8 p.m. Eastern, The Extra Mile. So plenty of shows coming up for you here on New York State Sports, IE Sports Radio. This is your season. Be sure to check that out. Thanks to Ralph for chiming in the chat. Thanks to Jen. Thanks to Larry. Thanks to Terrence. Thanks to all you guys tuning in. Enjoy the rest of sports this week. Enjoy the college basketball. It's in full force. If you don't have a team, get involved because the madness is a lot of fun. Until next week, let's go to Keeler saying enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe out there in the tri-state area. We'll see you next time.